James Williamson and Deniz Tek are punk rock legends. James as the driver of Iggy and the Stooges' Raw Power, Deniz with Radio Birdman. James and Deniz have made an album together. It's called 2 to 1. There's new music to talk about here and a whole stack of old stories. Here we go. James Williamson and Deniz Tek. It's absolutely my pleasure to put you two together. Two icons of punk. Thanks for joining us here at Noise 11.
Thanks for having us.
James, I'll throw it to you firstly. 2 to 1, the name of the album. It's a very appropriate title. It's also, the power of this record is a real reminder of what music used to be.
I guess that's a good way to describe it. I think that was really our intention, was to sort of, take all the frills off of it and get back to really playing, guitar music, which is what we both do. And I think it worked out really well.
And Deniz, was the album completed before the world was shut down?
Just. We recorded the backing tracks in San Francisco in December, just before Christmas. And we did the vocals in Hawaii in January. And then James and Nicholas Stein mixed the album, I believe, into March, and so they were mixing, and then by the time it was going to be mastered, the world shut down. So we sort of got all the traveling part of it done just in time to get that done, but then of course James got stuck in California.
It's interesting, isn't it, that this is a pre-COVID release, because a lot of the lyrics actually talk to the situation today, like take a look around, tired faces, damage done, lives wasted. That could be written about now.
Yeah, it's relevant, huh? It's funny how that worked out.
And what about a song like Climate Change? I mean, like climate change was the thing that we were all talking about until this came along. It's actually interesting how quickly governments have reacted to COVID, yet haven't acted towards climate change.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk all night about that, but I guess for me with those lyrics, it's really observational. It's holding up a mirror to the world. Not really trying to do propaganda, political propaganda or anything like that, but more just holding up a mirror and writing about what we're seeing out there.
Yeah, I guess songs like Stable and Jetpack Nightmare, these just sound like they were made to be played live. And I guess you were planning on doing all of this live. What would a set list have looked like?
Well, first of all, I don't think we are going to play it live, but I think perhaps Jetpack Nightmare would be a good kickoff tune on a set, right? And certainly this album in general is mostly up tempo, so it would make a hell of a set. I'm hoping that Deniz still plays live, so I'm hoping, he's a guitar player and he's a singer. I'm hoping he'll take some of these tunes and do them live.
So it's over to you, Deniz. It's your job to get them on the road.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to get anything on the road at this point would be great. But yeah, absolutely, these songs would be great to play live, and I certainly hope that at some point I can take a couple of these songs out on the road. And if James is in the general area, I'll twist his arm and make him come up and play them with me.
I was surprised you guys only met in 2011.
Of course, I was a fan since Raw Power, and so I knew about him for a long time, and the guitar playing on Raw Power completely blew me away. I'd never heard anything like it in my life. I was already a fan of the Stooges, the first phase of the Stooges, and heard a lot of guitar playing, but nothing like that. And so in 2011, we were on the same concert and we got a chance to meet and found out that we lived in the same area in Hawaii. You know, we were sort of neighbors and we didn't realize it.
The Raw Power album was also part of my upbringing. As you can see, there's my original copy on the old Columbia Records label, I think it was back then, or CBS we might have had down here.
Yeah, that's right. It was CBS. I have the same thing. I got my first copy in Australia as well.
Yeah, because Birdman played Search and Destroy live, didn't you?
Oh yeah, yeah. We've resurrected it from time to time, and I guess the last time we played it live would have been only about 3 years ago.
Have you got a favorite version of that, James?
Of Search and Destroy?
Yeah, I mean, Red Hot Chili Peppers did an amazing version of it.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that actually, I forget the guy, that's John Frusciante, was that the guy? He did the closest cover I've ever heard of that song. But of course, my favorite is the original. That's the historic version, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an incredible album, 1973. You're in the studio with David Bowie. Bowie hadn't reached iconic status at that point. He was still sort of developing. Did you have a sense of what was to come with him at that point?
No, actually, we didn't even like him. He wasn't in the studio with us, by the way. He simply mixed the record for us because it turned out we couldn't handle it. And so he got brought in to do that, but no, we didn't know. And we played a different type of music than Bowie ever did. He was kind of toony type guy and pop type guy. And we were something else, you know? So, but we got along with him fine. And no, we had no idea he was going to be as big as he ended up being.
There's a song on Raw Power, Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell. And in Bowie's latter years, he had a song, The Pretty Things Are Going to Hell. It's basically the same song. He's obviously aware of your song. You don't have a credit. Are you up for knocking on the Bowie estate door and asking for a Maserati?
No. He's done several of our tunes, and over the years, he liked to, he especially liked a lot of things that Iggy wrote, and he did one or two of mine, and so it's fine, whatever. But no, Bowie was an assimilator and an affiliator, and so those things are things that he would always do.
It's interesting seeing the influence from Deniz and James together. Like, you're both from Ann Arbor, is that correct?
I was born and raised in Ann Arbor, and James, tell me if I got this wrong, but James lived up in Birmingham, which is up north of northern part of Detroit for a while, and also down in Texas, and then came back to Ann Arbor later. I lived in Ann Arbor up until I was 18 years old, and then I left.
And that Radio Birdman name came from a Stooges song, didn't it?
Yeah, we thought it did. It was, and we heard Radio Birdman up above in the lyrics of 1970, and I became friends with Ron Ashton later on, and he told me that the actual way that the lyric was written was radio buzzing, but sometimes it's burning, and to us it's Birdman. So that's what we heard, and that's what we used.
You mentioned the name Ron Ashton there. James, you had sort of a strange relationship with him, didn't you?
Well, I didn't think so, but I think he felt that way. Ronnie was actually a pretty good friend of mine, and he had joined a band that I helped form, which was my first band called The Chosen Few. That later, you probably don't know these bands because they're local to that area, but a guy named Scott Richardson, who later became Scott Richards, created a band called SRC. And anyway, Ronnie joined as a bass player. And in fact, that's when I first met him. The first time was I went up to a fraternity gig they were playing, and both Ronnie and Iggy had come to see the show, and that's when I met them both. And I was pretty good friends with Ron for years and years and years. But the thing was, after sort of the second phase of the lineup, when I was playing in the two guitar lineup, we finally disbanded the Stooges altogether. And when Iggy got the CBS contract, he took me over to London, the purpose being to start a brand new band. So the Stooges were to be no more. And we got over there, and we realized after a very short period of time that there was nobody over there that we could find that we could relate to well enough to be in a band with them. And so one night I said to Iggy, hey, look, Ronnie can play the bass. He's a really good bass player, and Jim knew that. And his brother plays great with him. Why don't we just bring them over and sort of reform the band? Because the problem was that my style of guitar, I don't leave a lot of air. And so there's no room for another guitar player, really. And anyway, at the time, they were very happy to get the job. But I think later, there was lots and lots of sour grapes on that move.
Deniz, are you still living in Australia, or are you based in Hawaii now?
I'm based in Hawaii now. Yeah, we lived in Australia up until 3 years ago, but we were having to spend more and more time here in Hawaii to help my mom, who was she was left alone by my dad, passed away 9 years ago, and she was having increasing trouble managing the place here. And so we were coming over more and more frequently, and then 3 years ago we just picked up and moved here permanently because she needed us to. And so yeah, that's why we're here.
It's interesting you ending up in a place like Hawaii when the iconic Radio Birdman song is Aloha Stephen Dano.
Yeah, I guess that's a coincidence, isn't it? I mean, really,
it was destiny.
The only reason that became a Radio Birdman song in the first place was because I was twisting Rob Younger's arm to write music, trying to make him write something. And finally, he got tired of me haranguing him, and he was watching Hawaii Five-0 on TV, and he just got out a pad of paper and he just jotted down notes from the plot line of that one episode, and showed it to me the next time I saw him, like the next day. And so I said, yeah, we can make that into a song. and we'll incorporate the Hawaii Five-0 theme music in the middle 16 bars. That'll be great. And it was great, except we're still in legal problems about that.
After all these years?
After all these years.
Wow. Are you still working as a doctor?
No. When I left Australia to move to Hawaii, I quit practicing medicine. I was working at Royal Prince Alfred emergency room. I was a consultant there until 3 years ago.
Right. You did some time in Nowra as well, I think I recall from a previous interview.
Yeah, Shoalhaven Hospital. I used to do the occasional shift down there.
Mm-hmm. I used to do the occasional shift in Shoalhaven as well, but it was on 2ST.
All right. Used to live down there in the South Coast?
I found my wife in Nowra.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we lived in Kiama for like years before we came. We were sharing a house with John Needham. You know who he is?
No.
He's Birdman's manager.
Oh, okay.
And he manages Died Pretty and a couple of other bands as well.
What about the doco? I know Anthony Albanese is a big fan of Radio Birdman. He was quite instrumental in requesting that the Radio Birdman doco got streamed via the ABC and SBS.
That's right, but which I don't think it ever did. But yeah, we like Albo, and he, when we play in Sydney, he always shows up at the concert, and we give him a pass, and he comes backstage and has a couple of beers with us. But just to tell James who this is the leader of the Labour Party opposition in Australia. This guy's name is Anthony Albanese, and we call him Albo.
Yeah. James, Stooges were managed at one point by Jeff Wald, who was the husband of Helen Reddy. Did you know Helen back in those days?
No, I never did. We didn't really have much contact with Jeff Wald either. However, he had someone working for him named John Myers, who was our manager really, and then someone working for him that was a tour manager, and he was very good as well. So yeah, no, not directly, but a lot of those guys were people that were back from the sort of Bob Dylan camp back in New York, and so they all migrated out from New York and so forth. They were good. They had to put up with a lot with us, I'll tell you, but we had some good touring with them.
I understand the lot that they would have had to put up with you, just in looking back at your history. I'm surprised there hasn't been a movie along the lines of Motley Crue's The Dirt made about the Stooges. Tell me about the time Elton John jumped up on stage with you.
Yeah, that was an interesting night. We played a couple of weeks at a place called Richards in Atlanta. And I'm not sure why Elton John was there in Atlanta, but he had come to a show previously, and he liked the band. It's not at all clear what he liked about the band. Maybe he fancied some of us, but anyway, the second night he showed up, and he jumped up on stage in a gorilla outfit, unbeknownst to us. And so here we are, and nobody gets on our stage, and so he was very, very close. I mean, literally not just like instants away from getting a guitar smashed up against his head. And I think he sensed that, so he quickly pulled off his head and to show that he was Elton John, and then, of course, everything was wonderful, right? And it was pretty touchy moment right there. But yeah, he did. And then we figured that he liked us so much we'd be able to get a record on Rocket Records, because we were in the midst of creating Kill City at that time and needed somebody to make the record for us. But it wasn't to happen.
I'm surprised anyone would just turn up at a gig in a gorilla suit for a start, but that's probably a whole other story.
Yeah, well, I was surprised too.
That's one of the most amazing stories. I remember reading that in Cream or Trouser Press or something like that, and just reading that story when it happened and thinking, oh my God, that's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard. The original story had Iggy actually believing that it might be a real gorilla at first.
Yeah, I don't know where that actually happened, but on the other hand, he had enough substances in him that he could have believed a lot of things. I don't know.
Amazing stuff. You guys had worked before together, hadn't you?
Yeah.
This is not the first time in the studio.
We did an acoustic album, or actually not an album. It was a 10-inch vinyl EP, 4 songs, and it was called Acoustic KO, and it was 2 songs from Raw Power and 2 songs from Kill City that James thought, and I also thought, might really be interesting with an acoustic treatment. So it was all acoustic instruments on that, and we did that.
We look forward to catching up one day in the future, and in the meantime, the album 2 to 1, it's out there. Good stuff. Deniz Tek, James Williamson, thanks for joining us here at Noise 11.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah.